Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofit leadership and sustainability, where the passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact are celebrated. With your host, Jarrett Ransom, get ready to explore inspiring stories and game changing strategies of nonprofit leaders from across the sector. In this season, we're focusing on critical management challenges that are key to the long-term success of nonprofit organizations. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense, in-depth conversations with the real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and learn how to navigate and overcome the challenges that help build stronger, more sustainable organizations. Now, let's dive in and harness the collective power of our nonprofit networks to create lasting change.
Welcome back. I am thrilled to be joined today by Ann Fellman, who brings incredible expertise in donor engagement, nonprofit strategy, and sustainable fundraising. Ann joins us from Bloomerang, this season's sponsor, where she works to support the nonprofit sector by raising awareness, connecting with organizations, and helping you thrive. On today's episode, Ann and I dive into future planning and sustainability for nonprofits. She explores everything from organizational sustainability to mapping donor journeys and integrating technology for seamless donor engagement with me, and I think you're really going to enjoy what she shares. We discuss donor generosity trends for 2025, the role of AI in fundraising, optimizing your tech stack, and practical strategies for sustainable fundraising that empowers your team and helps to strengthen those donor relationships. She shares insights on building a connected donor experience, leveraging CRM data effectively, and using technology intentionally, keyword intentionally, to free up staff for those high value activities. And of course, a special shout out to Bloomerang, whose platform helps nonprofits track engagement, simplify giving, and make data-driven decisions day in and day out. You can learn more at bloomerang.com, and Ann even gives you an invite to connect with her on LinkedIn. So get ready for an insightful conversation. It is full of practical tips, inspiring ideas, and forward-thinking strategies that you can use to strengthen your organization's impact. Grab your pen and paper because you're going to want to make some notes on all of this insight that Ann drops with us today. Well, hello and welcome back to all of you. And I am thrilled to have today's guest, Ann Fellman with Bloomerang. So Ann, hello and thank you for joining me.
Hi, Jarrett. Thank you for having me. It's always a real joy to get connected and have a conversation. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and we jumped right into conversation. We've known each other for quite a few years, and I love nerding out with you. It's a lot of fun, but I'm sure we have some listeners, maybe one or two, that aren't familiar with you, your role, and really, the role that you play in the sector, but also at Bloomerang. So would you start us off by sharing just a little bit about yourself and how you serve in this nonprofit space?
Great. Okay, so my job is all things marketing at Bloomerang. I'm the chief marketing officer. And I always I put myself at the bottom. I'm there to support the company and the team in terms of getting the word out into the sector around how we could be more successful as a sector and how we can raise more funds, right? And help tell that story and share the stories of the nonprofits that we have the honor and the pleasure to serve. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. I have been around for a long time in technology and even in nonprofit earlier in my career. So I was selling, selling's not the right word, raising awareness for technology in Minnesota. I was the manager of member services early in my career. So getting organizations and getting individuals excited about technology in Minnesota's economy. So that was my job. But that gave me early on the understanding of what it was like to work in a nonprofit and be on a team of six. And what is that like? So fast forward to Bloomerang, it's beautiful to be bringing that all together of how technology and how our nonprofit work, how they can work hand in hand and how we can raise more and do more good. So my job is to get out there and connect with people like you and to connect with customers and other nonprofits to really discover and talk about what are the things that we can be doing as nonprofit professionals to thrive because our communities need us more than ever.
They need us. Absolutely. And that's a great segue to some of the questions that I want to ask you as we look at this. And I'm thinking broad picture, Ann, like donor engagement, fundraising, sustainability. What we didn't get recorded was the conversation you and I jumped into right before we did hit record for this conversation. But I love how Bloomerang talks about donor engagement and the trends that we see in the sector. So I really want to ask you, for 2025, what are some of these donor engagement trends that you have seen throughout the year? And are there any that you think will carry over into the next year or even beyond?
Yeah, well, this is critical, and I think it's the underpinning of help with the sustainability question or helping all nonprofits thrive. And there's a few key areas that when we look at 2025 and the trends and then where we're going as a sector. One is that requirement of a seamless connected donor experience, right? And what that is really around, there's a lot of talk that there's a generosity crisis and donors are fatigued and they're going away. But when you look at some of the data and when we see where successes lie, there's a lot of generosity out there and it's actually growing. And so it can come down to this of that seamless connected donor experience. And what does that mean? Well, donors they don't see themselves as interacting with you on a siloed base, in a siloed basis. So we have to think about that and that neither should we, right? And so looking at, they see maybe your organization put out an Instagram post, right? Then they maybe read something, saw a video or a story on your blog, or they signed up for a volunteer shift, right? To them, that's one experience with your organization, but a lot of times, on the organization side, we see those separately or in silos. And so donors expect to be on a journey with you. They're passionate about your organization. So making sure we're connected and like intuitive for the next steps and we understand what their journey has been. Being able to have that visibility and create that experience is a really important component when we think about 2025 and what's next. You think about the consumer world, right? And our expectation, how the consumer world and our consumer retail experiences or other things have shaped us and our expectations. Like we should know them, and donors have come to expect that. And so that's, I think, a really important component. And so this connection is all about seeing that, stitching that together, and then making sure we're really transparent in our storytelling and our messages so that we can see success again and again with that donor and their specific journey. So that connected seamless experience is like trend or element number one.
You have described that so beautifully and almost to the point where I see organizations, and you hit it spot on, and it's like there's a volunteer manager, there's a donor development person, there's a programs person, and we as nonprofit leaders often execute our mission, our story, our journey in these like siloed ways and not a seamless integration. And when I think about sales journey, purchasing journey, right? And we mirror a lot of the sales tactics, psychology into fundraising. Why would it not be a seamless journey, right? So I love that you described it the way that you did. I also love that you reiterated what your colleague Mary Krogan shared in last season. In fact, she double dipped into season 7. So we had her on twice talking about generosity and how it is in fact here. It is here. And in some ways it is bigger and better than what we've seen before. So I appreciate those call outs.
Yeah, well, and the wealth transfer. So think about like maybe you have a long-term donor, right, that's been around a long time, and Perhaps they're entering into a phase in life where there's maybe a wealth transfer that might be happening within the family. So how do you look at them and their journey, and how do you engage with them in a way that then we can tap into the next generation,
Yes.
and making sure that next generation can be just as passionate about your organization. It's important to have that connected journey.
Let's dive into that because I really want to know how we as leaders doing the day-to-day work, right? Like, how can we use our data that CRMs, have for us? There's so much information in them. Sometimes information that I don't think we even take advantage of, right? Like there's
Yeah.
so much in there. But how do we use that data to deepen these donor relationships? And like you said, it might go beyond a generation, but really keeping these interactions authentic, human, donor centric. What are ways that the data, and I've always said data is sexy. So how do we incorporate that?
I love it. I love it. Yes, data is sexy. There's this fear that data makes us robotic or just too clinical in some ways, but actually the opposite is true. Data, when used correctly, data is that path for a deeper human connection. How do we use data to inform those next conversations, those next engagements, or the next story that we tell? And so that's where data can create a meaningful engagement with your supporters. And so that's what's really important. So data should be flowing. Data is not a stat. I mean, it sounds so boring, right? Information, knowledge, right? It should be flowing. It should not be a static one time. Yep, we refreshed our donor prospect information and one and done and forget about it, right? No, it's like data should be flowing in those insights. And so that is a really, really key piece, and making sure your technology allows your data to flow. So, right, we are just talking about those different interactions. How do you stitch that together? And then how do you layer in additional data and information or knowledge about your supporters so that you can create real human connections? It's,
Yeah.
you got to have it all together.
So what if we don't? And what if there's mistakes? Like what if we are doing the textbook pitfalls, right? Like, can you talk to us about what are some of these common mistakes that maybe we're seeing that nonprofits are making with their donor database? Maybe even pitfalls of stewardship strategies. And then, of course, Anne, if you can tell us, how do we not do this, right? Like, how
Yeah,
do
how do we
we avoid
avoid
these
it?
pitfalls?
Yeah. Okay. Funny story. Earlier this summer, cleaning out the basement, right? It was like, what are we doing? We just have too much stuff. And I finally opened up a box and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? Rolodexes from 1997. I was like, what am I doing with these two Rolodexes? Like the information in here, I'm sure none of these people work at these companies anymore. And so that is mistake number one. The CRM or your CRM as a digital Rolodex, right? It was a very static thing. What are you, again, my Rolodex from 1998. What? I mean, there's nothing good in that. And so treating your CRM as a glorified address book, that is mistake number one, right? So you've really, okay, so what's the flip side of that? Think about your CRM has to be able to support you or your donor database, however you want to call it. Use the technology word to refer to that thing that holds all this information about your donors. It should be dynamic. It's the beating heart of your organization. So data needs to flow in and out, right? And capture those different touch points that you're making with them throughout their journey, right? Because this is the engagement hub. This is going to be the thing that should be able to stitch this all together. Every donation that they've made, every email they've opened, every event they attended, every volunteer shift that they've made. How is your CRM really uh, capturing that information and holding that and keeping that up to date and accurate? And is it doing it seamlessly and automatically, as I like to say? So that's mistake number one. The
Yeah, I just want to call out Rolodex because this is now the second time, and I want to say like 10 days that I've heard that word. And I'm sure there's people listening going, what the heck is a Rolodex, right?
you're gonna have to Google it, but it's
Yeah, it's
really,
archaic. It's
yeah.
archaic. Yeah. And don't treat, I mean, basically what it is don't treat your database as the static Rolodex that, like you said, having a business card in there, having a contact for someone that held the position in the 90s, very likely they're not there anymore. So I appreciate that the donor database should be the heartbeat of your organization, and it needs to be maintained. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the Rolodex. Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of mistake number one. Do you want me to go into some other mistakes?
Yes, I do.
Okay, okay. So mistake number two is so on the Halloween theme, Frankenstack of disconnected tools, right? So this is very common, right? We buy this tool to do this thing for this event, or we buy, this tool to manage just my volunteer signups, right? This tool for peer to peer, right? And all of a sudden you have this Frankenstack, and maybe they don't even talk to one another, right? And so that is a horribly fragmented silo. Again, back to that donor journey and sustainability. Do we have line of sight through that whole donor experience? And the answers, your systems, if those are technologies are not talking and readily and easily sharing the information back and forth to create one cohesive picture of your supporter, as I like to say, you're going to have the generic impersonal outreach was like, thank you for your gift, you know? And so that the Frankenstack is a real problem for organizations.
As you know, I love this role, but I come in and I serve as an interim succession leader, transition leader. So right now I'm serving as an interim CEO, and I reached out, contacted a colleague of mine because I knew in my core that this organization had a tech problem, right? A tech stack problem. And so what we are just doing at this moment is a tech inventory and listing out all of our technology. What is it we're using them for? What is programs using? How often do they use it? And how much does it cost? What is advancement or development using? What is finance using, right? So really looking at this because it is very Frankenstack, and where might we be able to find ways to integrate in a more seamless way? So I appreciate that call out that you shared, because I also think just taking a step back to assess what are the tools we're using, how do they integrate, and is this something that we want to, or maybe they're duplicative, right? Like maybe we have
Right.
programs in advancement have a similar software, I should say, technology function, but they're using it, similarly, but in different areas and not even talking to one another. So I appreciate that and would love to know if you have any other pitfalls, because again, our
I
list.
do have one more, but I'll comment on it because like it plays into the next one. When you go through that tech stack assessment, get clarity on what problem are you trying to solve by using that technology. From time to time, I talk to different people throughout my career of like, okay, well, why do you want that technology or that thing? And they're like, oh, it's cool. And this will go into, the next topic. But just because something is cool or interesting or my friend does it doesn't mean that it's going to best solve the problem for you. So be really clear on that, intentional. Like you said, there might be two different teams in your organization that are using something similar where we could streamline and get down to one. And then again, you get closer to making sure this all comes together, because at the heart of this, of what problem are we trying to solve by using all these things, is connect with people that care about our organization and engage with them in the ways that they want to support us, right? So we can deliver our mission. And so be really clear and intentional on that and have those conversations. That's important. So speaking of cool things, AI, mistake number three, unleashing AI without guardrails or without intentionality. And again, organizations like there is a wide range of comfort and willingness and openness to AI. And so wherever you're at on your journey, that's fine. But some are really excited and they're rushing to adopt it without a clear strategy. And I think that this goes for any technology, any technology. And so that is, without the guardrails, without intentionality about it. And they're like, oh, this will help us scale. We can replace people with it. And that's AI. Actually, what I've seen when I work with AI is AI is not used to replace human judgment or our work, but it's to assist it. It's to help us accelerate it. It's help us to be a little bit smarter, a little bit faster. And so making sure you've got a human in the loop, you're checking, depending on how you're using it, making sure that you got, good thought around how you want to work with AI and intentionality around like what are you leaning on it for to make you do something a little bit better? What problem are you trying to solve? Because it can quickly erode trust um, that you work so hard to build. So making sure you've got good human in the loop around responsible and intentional AI use. If
That
you're
is a great reminder. And I appreciate you sharing these pitfalls because for all our listeners out there, right? I hope you wrote those down. Go back to your organization, make sure this isn't happening. And looking at that AI, it is super cool and it is helpful, right? But we have to make sure that we're going about it in with that intentionality. So I appreciate you sharing that, Anne. And as we look at all of this, again, donor engagement, fundraising, sustainability, at the end of the day, so many of us are worried about the dollars that come in, right? I mean, our listeners are having this in their ears perhaps right now. The end of Q4, right, of the calendar year, coming up on the busy holiday season, which brings in the most dollars for all of us, right, at the end
right.
of the year. So I'm really curious from your perspective, what does this, and I'm going to use it in quotes, but sustainable fundraising, because I think that might be a buzzword. We throw it around a lot in our sector, but what does sustainable fundraising really look like into practice? And I love, Mary always shares some great stories. What I love about Bloomerang too are the true case studies, the real-time scenarios that so many of your customers have shared. So I'm curious, right, from you, Anne, and your perspective, what does sustainable fundraising look like?
Well, it's probably one of the most important topics and conversations we should be having as nonprofits and nonprofit professionals is sustainable fundraising because the landscape, whether or not we care to admit it, is changing. It's changed a lot. Even, for organizations this year, it's changed a lot. It's always changing though, right? We talked a little bit earlier about generational shifts. We've talked about changes in grant types of grant funding that are happening and that, so there's a lot of things out of our control. And so we should lean into the things that we can manage. And so sustainable fundraising and having a really good strategy around that is just like it's going to be essential. And so creating the time and space to do that is key. When we think about sustainable fundraising, it's really not just about money, but it's about people. So let's start with your team first. Okay. Time to liberate our team. So at its core, when you have sustainable, strong fundraising programs, right? It's really about helping your team focus their energy on where it matters the most, what's really going to move the needle. And so making sure that you're taking the time to look at how your team is working and are they bogged down by all the administrative tasks and they're running around like, just doing a lot of busy work, right? And that's where technology can actually help you scale and help do some of the busy work, importing and exporting CSV files right back to the Frankenstack. Okay, export that and then put that in here and manually saying, cutting up lists and let's focus, right? That's a lot of busy work when they could be spending their time focused on the people and the human connections, right? So there's technology to do that for you. That's really, as a team, is like, that is soul crushing work. And you lose your creativity and your passion, right? That stuff is really zapping. It's just not a good use of time. And so spend your energy on the high value capacity things, but really back to your team and energizing them, inspiring them. Set an inspiring goal. Too often I have conversations and I'm like, well, what was your goal for this year? And they're like, oh, it was kind of like do what we did last year or do a little bit more. We are seeing organizations that when they're aiming high, they're seeing double-digit growth goals.
Wow.
Okay. So I think it's about your team, looking at how your team operates, making sure we're creating space to help them spend the time on the energizing, high-value human things, right? Use the tech to do the uninspiring work. But also, be clear on your destination, but also set your goal high because set the goal and let them go, as I like to say.
Yeah. And I love that. Like, let's remember that that aspiration is there and, you know, beating that, exceeding that. How rewarding.
How fun is that? And celebrate those little wins and those little milestone moments. So again, be clear in your goal, your destination, talk about different moments in time, and make sure you're doing the high five. Or if you're remote or whatever, do the virtual high five, do the happy dance, do all those things, because those moments are energizing. So capture that, create that inspiration for your team. So that's really key. And then it's, get into scalable systems, right? Automate the repetitive work, all those things, because at the end of the day, let's say you get a donation come in and you're like, the receipt goes out, the beautiful, like automated receipt goes out for you. But where technology can be like, okay, Jarrett, now's the time in the next day or two, make the phone call to that donor and thank them. And that's where the joy comes in, because when I talk to customers, a nonprofit fundraiser I was talking to the other week, she was like, "Yeah, I decided to pick up the call, call the donor that had given a lot in the past but hasn't in a while. Picked up the phone, they had a wonderful conversation, and in that conversation, they committed to another major gift."
Oh my
Right?
God.
And so it was just like a reminder of like we're human beings, we thrive on actual personal connection, and so picking up that phone is key.
It is
That
key.
is a really important element to sustainable fundraising. Um, and modern tech can help you do that. And
Yeah.
Jared, I want to talk about one last thing, because I talking about a little bit here and there, but sustainable fundraising too is looking at making sure your tech can support you in recurring giving programs. Too often, so it was interesting. I was at an event early this year, and it was like, "How many of you have a recurring giving program?" Not very many. "How many of you want to?" Lots of hands raised. And so, what like we have teams focused on major gifts, right? But we don't have anybody focused on recurring giving. And I think there's, when you talk about sustainability, when we look at some of the organizations that we work with that are having fantastic years, their recurring giving programs are really thriving, but they're putting energy and emphasis on it.
That's a
And
great call
I
out. And you're
think
right.
that's a really important component, because I'd much rather have a $10 gift every month versus a one-time $100 gift.
Absolutely. And then you get to steward them, you get to build on those relationships. That is something that I think, going back to the phone call example, and having that donor give again, that's a recurring gift. It might not be monthly, but literally looking at it in that way. I personally, Bloomerang, and I've said this openly, over the last 4 or 5 years, is one of my favorite donor databases, hands down, one of my favorite, if not my favorite. But I'm curious, you know, how Bloomerang specifically is helping nonprofits strengthen donor engagement and continue to build on these sustainable fundraising systems. The dashboard has been my best friend, because it will say, call this person, it's their first time gift, or you can set the report so that you can run them and see that this person made a substantial increase in their gift. So what are some other ways specifically that the donor database, Bloomerang in particular, what are some of the things that exist that are supporting this strengthening and the donor engagement?
Right. Well, let's think about it. Let's think beyond a donor database. So, Bloomerang, what we've done over the last couple of years is really brought together some of the best technology when it comes to fundraising, managing, and those donor relationships, right? The core donor database, what you're saying, but also your volunteers or your supporters in other ways. So we've delivered the first truly unified giving platform. So it's very clear what we're trying to do here. We believe that nonprofits don't need to do more with less. They can do more with more, and give you more time, give you more insight and more impact and more connection with those donors. So bringing together all those interactions, right? All that history. Yes, you can see it on the dashboard, the whole journey, or you're looking at a specific donor and you're saying like, well, let's look at their whole history. How active have they been? Oh my gosh, we got to engage with them because they seem to really like this event every year, right? And I wasn't going to invite him this year because I haven't heard from him in a while. And like customers have uncovered that and made, gotten gifts just from those phone calls, like we just talked about. And so bringing this together, bringing the best in fundraising, in donor management or that donor database, and volunteer management into a seamless single, what we call the giving platform, right? People give in so many different ways, and being able to capture that and create that insight for you as a fundraiser is really, really, really important. And so we're really reimagining that too. So making it really easy for you, because we know that nonprofit pros are so busy. I always say to the team, don't make me think, right? And so make it easy, it's because I just don't have the time to figure something out. So if we can make it as easy as possible. So we're reimagining that experience for the fundraiser from the ground up. And that's what the giving platform is doing. So.
Yeah. I love that so much. And I'm sure there's, so many listeners right now saying, I want to reimagine my platform, my tech stack. So how can people learn more about you, Ann, if you're open to that, but also Bloomerang? Because maybe they're saying, yeah, I do want this giving platform. I do want to integrate all of these ways. I want it to be the heartbeat of my organization and not a Frankenstack. So where do we go to find out more?
Right. Well, the best place to go is bloomerang.com, right? Start there. There are so many stories, customer stories, where you probably will find somebody that is very similar to your organization and been on a similar journey, and you can read all about the outcomes that they've seen. I just absolutely love the customer stories that are there. So go to bloomerang.com. You can see the platform in action. You can take yourself on a little self-guided tour. You can engage with our team in real time on the site, all the things. I also invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me. I'm just Ann Fellman on LinkedIn.
Yes, just Ann.
Yeah, just Ann. It's super easy. It's not Ann with a bunch of numbers, just Ann Fellman. If you find, you'll find me right away. I love having those conversations. It was funny. I was hosting a webinar a few weeks ago, and somebody then messaged me on LinkedIn and was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm in the same area you are. Can we meet for coffee sometime and just brainstorm?" And I love that. So I'm absolutely open, whether we continue the conversation, over LinkedIn or digitally, but also like I'm sometimes going around to different parts of the country, so I'm always happy to connect.
Oh, that sounds great. We've got to get coffee on the books. I would love to do that in person.
I know. That would be fun. It's been a while to
It's
see you in person.
it's been a while. Yeah. Well, as we come up on the final of this conversation, I just want to ask if you have a last, sage advice, final takeaway that you want to leave other nonprofit pros listening to this right now. What is it you want to leave them with?
Yeah. It's really, if there's one thing, one absolute thing is, you know what? The future of fundraising is really bright. And put it out there. Raise your targets, like raise your goals, because the generosity, the technologies that are out there, if something is draining you, be brave and bold and make the change, because generosity is out there and it is flowing. And we need the energy and enthusiasm and the outlook to go tap into it, because it's there. We see it time and time again. And so you too can do this. And that's where I would say pick your head up and go out there and seize the day, so to speak.
Fantastic. I don't think there's any better words to leave everyone with, especially as they're listening to this, the final push for the year. So Ann, thank you for being such a phenomenal guest. It's always nice to chat with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jarrett. It was a pleasure being here.